Well, good evening, everyone. Real quick, I want to talk about Chilling, the awesome horror app that I'm partnered with. Now, in case you haven't heard, every week I have new stories released over on Chilling. There are now over 1,000 stories there, with a bunch of other YouTube narrators and professionals to choose from. Now, on Chilling, you can do things that you'll never be able to do on YouTube. Choose from over 1,000 individual stories, and they're sorted into curated playlists, or you can create your own. On Chilling, we give you so much flexibility to listen the way you want. This includes a Chilling game-changing feature, our own ambient menu. You can change the background sounds of the story at any time to fit your mood. Go from rain to a campfire with the press of a button. It's totally revolutionary, and you need to try it. There have been a number of recent awesome updates to Chilling, such as the ability to download stories for offline listening, and the new social feature. You can now discuss your favorite stories with other users and friends. We are just getting started. Not only are we adding hours of new content every week, but original video content is also in the works. Chilling is evolving into a must-have for all horror lovers. Now please go start your free trial on Chilling and check out my personal playlist there. Oh, and this month, Chilling has an incredible Xbox giveaway for you all. Just leave a review on Google Play or the App Store, letting us know what you think. Click the link in the description for more details on how to enter. It's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Before he died, the lead singer of a band I was in wrote a song that I'm starting to think is cursed. And what's worse, I just released it. Jason's Greatest Hit by Corpse Child. Oh God, what have I done? There's a way to fix this, right? I can still fix this, right? Okay, look, whatever happens to you or anyone else, I want you all to understand something right now. I didn't know. Okay, I didn't know this is what was gonna happen. I just wanted to pay tribute to my friend. How was I supposed to know this might have had something to do with it? Okay, just breathe. So, I used to be in a band. I was the bassist and occasionally played piano on some of our slower pieces. It was me, Vince, who played the guitar and backup vocals, Ricky, our drummer, Hammerhand, we nicknamed him, on account of the way he bangs the absolute shit out of his drum set, which for us somehow works perfectly. Oh, and Jason, our leader, frontman and lead guitarist. And together we were the Seraphim. Yeah, cheesy as hell, I know, but that was us. Saviors of symphony. That basically tells you who we were and what we were about. Basically, our music was the kind that one moment you're listening to something heavy, brutal, and gut-twisting, or think Bathory or Mayhem. Then the next, in a transition that just somehow works, you're listening to something that's both elegant and heavy at the same time. You're probably thinking, how is that supposed to work, Brad? How can you have that combination sound good? Well, you know what? It's an excellent question. And the excellent answer is, how the fuck should I know? All I can say about it is that, well, it just does. Okay, so that was a bit harsh, but you get the idea, right? We were the Seraphim, and our music was a combination that seemed weird to most people, including us ourselves, believe me, but was still loved by those that had heard it. I bet you're also wondering why you haven't heard of us before. Well, aside from the fact that I've just spent the last few hours or so trying to wipe any of our other songs from our SoundCloud or our YouTube pages for good measure, we weren't that big. For one thing, we haven't been around that long. Well, you see, something else to keep in mind. We're all just a bunch of stoned off our ass idiots in college who happen to know, or at least were able to learn quickly, how to actually play instruments. We never had any big gigs or anything, mostly just performing at carnivals or county fairs. We always talked, of course, that we make it to perform at big-time shows like Woodstock or Michigan Stadium or some shit like that, you know. The big time. And while we had actual goals and hopes for that, A small part inside of us all knew that it was probably unlikely. Well, not impossible, but not likely, you know. Well, all of us, that is, except for Jason. Yeah, for him, that was his single life goal. The one and only thing that he ever seemed to focus on. I mean, the guy would give less than 0 shits about his grades in his classes circling the drain, or even the fact that his girlfriend was sleeping around on him. Something she all but publicly announced on her Snapchat. Well, all of that. He could watch burn without saying so much as a single word. Or so we all thought anyways. But when it came to the band, making it big, he was all business. The man was devoted to the music, to say the least. I remember either me or Vince would constantly hear him either humming a tune we'd not heard before, or even outright singing a whole new set of lyrics. And that wasn't all. He'd essentially coach us along, trying to work with each of us to, in his words, perfect the angel's call. Basically, he had a vision for all of us, and he'd stop at nothing to make sure we all fit that picture. Most of the time this turned out to be cool because it allowed us all to get better and pursue something together, you know. But other times, though, this obsession would drive a bit of tension between the four of us. Like I said, he had a vision, and if we didn't fit that vision in some way, falling short or just not driven enough at the time, he'd sometimes harshly do everything in his power and more to fix that. Well, admittedly, me and the others worried about him because of this. Again, we all loved the band and all, but especially as time went on and we'd performed a few times, we started to feel like it was never enough. Like we could never amount to the same level of devotion as him, even though we were really trying. And to his credit, Jason was talented. He wasn't just all talk with his devotion. No, he could definitely sing, and he had some awesome ideas. I remember one song we did. He had the idea for me and Ricky to, instead of using our instruments, use the machinery in his dad's old workshed to create a sort of ambience while he and Vince did vocals. It was weird, yes, and it wasn't one of our more popular tracks, but it was one of my favorites. Like I said, that was us. Weird, different, unique. Fun, at least when we could do something bizarre like that. Oh, hence the name. Seraphim, as in angels. Beings that couldn't be fathomed by mankind, right? Things that couldn't be understood that weren't necessarily meant to be understood like others. Guess I'm trying to say that that's what our music was all about. Anyway, so we'd played a few small gigs at the time, and people seemed to like us well enough. We'd also been trying to submit to a few record labels, but either never heard back from any of them, or the ones that did get back to us were quote-unquote soft passes. This, of course, kind of sucked for all of us, but none more than Jason. We could all see it too, how it affected him. It started with him constantly having us practice for damn near 10 hours a day for several weeks. Every time something got botched, even just by a little bit, or just wasn't what he wanted it to sound like, well, the way he imagined it sounding, he'd push us that much harder and harder. Over time, he'd start to lash out at us all for it as well. And on the few occasions he wasn't cracking the whip over us, he'd lock himself in his dorm, not coming out or speaking to us at all until the next time we got together to practice. I think, even at the time, this was what really started eating away at me personally. It worried me just how much it got to him whenever we'd get a rejection letter. I knew it was his dream and all to be represented by an actual label, getting an actual record deal. Again, all of us wanted that, but whereas we were still able to accept the L while still trying to truck on, or having fun with it, Jason only became more and more bitter and determined to make it all come true. As it got worse, I wasn't sure what we were supposed to do. I remember it was on one of the occasions I mentioned earlier, where he was holed up in his dorm, that Vince and I actually ended up getting into an argument over whether or not just to quit the Seraphim altogether. He thought Jason was just turning into an overly obsessive jackass, while I was more worried about his mental well-being. I figured abandoning him, even if he was just being kind of a jerk, was probably the worst mistake to make in this instance. Vincent, on the other hand, was over it. In the end, we settled on me talking to Jason, see if maybe I could get through to him that the way he was going about all of this was getting to be a problem for us, you know. Honestly, I didn't have that high of hopes for the plan to work. After all, he was the leader. He was the one that started us in the first place. What weight would my words hold? Well, I guess, in a way, that makes this all kind of even more my fault, doesn't it? I went to him one day after a particularly harsh practice session. The whole time was spent, more or less, with Jason reaming Vince that his vocals were off-key somehow. To be honest, I thought Vince sounded perfectly fine. Better, actually, than he had in most of the other songs he'd been in. But, for whatever reason, it just wasn't right. It wasn't perfect. And of course, Ricky and I had gotten holes almost just as big ripped in our asses by him as well. We were all sick of it and, frankly, just about sick of it all. Vince ended up walking out pissed off just half an hour before we'd stopped for the day. Ricky followed soon after, only about 10 minutes later. Then it was just me and Jason. I remember how he had that look, the same one he had when we were turned down for a gig or a possible record deal. It was his look of defeat, like he was just about ready to give up himself. Oh, I hated seeing him like that. I knew I had to say something. "Hey man," I began, trying to sound as genuinely sympathetic as I possibly could. He didn't move or say anything. His eyes stayed fixed to the floor with an icy stare. "Jason?" I asked. Nothing. I slowly walked over and put my hand gently on his shoulder. "Hey dude, you okay?" That was when he looked up at me. His eyes were wide, yet dead at the same time. It was the most gut-wrenchingly serious expression I'd ever seen on his, or as well as anyone else's for that matter, face. It actually spooked me a little. He then looked back to the floor. "Hey, come on," I said, attempting to guide him out of the room. "Why don't you and I go for a drive? Get some food, maybe?" Alone, I walk the twilight trail. I raised my eyebrow. I just barely heard him. His voice was so soft, it almost cracked at the same time. What?" I asked. "With skin so pale, heart so rent, and soul so battered, I forever walk this twilight trail, utterly spent and scattered." He held his hand up to his face. "With these hands I create and break, with this tongue I state and slake." I just stared at him. His face stayed chiseled in that look of cold stoicism. He then snapped his head up abruptly to look at me. "Pencil," he blurted. "What? Wait, what?" "Pencil, paper, give them to me now." I stood blinking for a moment, mind completely blank. "Now," he barked, his eyes opening wider now, looking wild in a way. Snapped abruptly from my confused stupor, I scrambled over to my backpack and pulled out my notebook and pencil from class and gave it to him. He snatched them from me and scurried out of the garage to his car. Hey, wait," I called out, reaching out for him to stop. "What are you doing?" But I was too late. He was long gone by the time I could reach him. If he did hear me, he didn't try to let on. What the hell was that about? I wondered, standing in the driveway of his parents' old house. Confused, tired, and frankly just outright done for the day. Mentally exhausted with everything from that day, well, actually from the entire week, if we're going to be honest here. I grabbed my backpack and bass and headed back to my dorm at the campus. As soon as I got back, I threw myself on my couch and, maybe 5 minutes later, I was out like a light. The next morning, I remember waking up in a panic. I realized that the time was almost 11:30. I was late for practice. I started moving in a frenzy to get ready and out of the door. Oh, fuck, Jason's gonna be pissed, I thought as I looked at my phone, expecting to see at least 10 missed calls and about 100 pissed-off text messages from Jason, wondering where the hell I was. I was a bit shocked, however, to find absolutely nothing from him, or any of the other two. Regardless, I still got dressed in a hurry before flying out of the dorm and to the parking lot. I got in my car and panic-typed a text to Vince, telling him I was on my way and to let Jason know and tell him in advance that I was sorry for waking up late. About half a minute later, Vince texted me back saying that they weren't there. I was confused. Oh, yeah, didn't we tell you? Like, he wasn't even there, man. Ricky and I waited for almost an hour and a half. When did he cancel practice, and how come no one said anything to me? He shot back with a shrug and replied saying, "Fuck if I know, man. Been trying to get a hold of him all morning. So far he's gone completely ghost." He didn't say anything to either of you all before? No. To be honest, we kind of figured he was avoiding talking to us after what happened yesterday. Speaking of which, you talked to him? Yeah, sorta. And? I hesitated for a moment. Truthfully, I wasn't sure exactly what to say. I mean, like I told him, we sort of talked. Though it wasn't like any sort of agreement or understanding was reached. Well, we didn't really say much. What do you mean? Well, I don't know, like, he just started laying out some lyrics or something. Guess some new song he was going to try or something, maybe. He flaked afterwards. He then shot me the confused emoji. Yeah, man, it was weird. I think maybe he's holding up again, planning a new song, maybe. Oh, maybe. That might explain why he hasn't returned either mine or Ricky's calls. Honestly, I'm not sweating it, though. Between you and me, I had more than half a mind to say fuck this and not even try to show up today. Well, do me a favor. Send him a message and tell him to call me. Okay, yes. Don't see why it matters, though. Seriously, bro, I say enjoy the day off. God knows we've been putting up with more than enough of this shit, and we've earned a break. Hell, I'm seriously looking to see if I can find openings for other bands. Look, just text him, dude. Fine, whatever. After that, I turned around and headed back to the dorm. Well, I was relieved I wasn't missing practice, and therefore didn't have to worry about catching shit from Jason. I didn't exactly relax, though. Yeah, Vince had a point. We did need the day off, having spent almost the last 3 weeks straight busting our asses in rehearsal. That said, though, something just didn't feel quite right. I know I said before how we'd sometimes call off practice for a day or two and go dark on us, but even then he would typically still send a text out to the three of us saying so. But not this time. Why? I tried thinking back to the situation in the garage. I tried to think about the lyrics I'd heard, what they meant, if anything, or if there was something I might have heard before. None of it drew any conclusions, though. The best I had at the moment was what I told Vince, that he was working on putting together a new song for us. Again, though, why had he not said anything beforehand or responded to any of us? Well, this had me pacing the floor for the rest of the night, as well as for the next few days, during all of which Jason kept complete radio silence. It was when it got to that Saturday, about 2 weeks ago now, and we'd still not heard a single thing from him, that I got worried. Vince told me he'd messaged him to call me, though something tells me that either he was bullshitting about that, or he was right about Jason giving the two of them the cold shoulder. Either way, I knew something wasn't entirely on the up and up. That's when I decided to go to his house and try talking to him directly there. Because I wasn't trying to be an asshole, as well as possibly a way to try and get his attention early on, I shot him a text letting him know I was coming over, that I wanted to talk. Again, I'd hoped he would have responded, either saying it was cool or just straight up telling me to fuck right off. But nope, nothing. This was making me more and more agitated. I actually began wondering if maybe he was in trouble, like something had happened. Look, call me what you want, overbearing, worrywart, or overreacting. I don't care, but I knew something just wasn't right. Cold shoulder or hibernating, whatever it wasn't normal, even for Jason. Jason, I called out, knocking on his front door. I listened for a second. Nothing. I tried knocking again. I knew he was home, given that his car was there when I pulled up. Jason, you home? Come on, man, open up. It's me, Brad. I want to talk to you. Silence. I beat on the door one last time, this time sounding like my fist was a jackhammer against it. When even this got no answer, I then started peering through the windows to see if he was in the living room. I couldn't see much of anything, though. The room was dark. I started tapping on the window, trying to call out from there. Still, nothing. Now I was getting a bit aggravated. I mean, come on. What did I do to piss him off, huh? I'd not said a damn word to him about any of this. Letting him have his way, and yet there I was, being basically ignored. I decided to try going around to the back to see if he'd let me in through the back door. When I got around to the back, though, I started to hear the sound of his voice coming from the basement level. It was him, but at the same time, it wasn't entirely, if that makes any sense. It sounded a lot more like it was his voice, but coming from an older, bigger guy. Not only that, but it also seemed to carry a sort of echo to it. One that, in a way, I felt sort of run through me, resonating off my bones and causing my insides to churn a bit. It was as queasy a feeling as it was weird. Well, despite this, I moved in closer to listen to what I thought I heard him saying. Alone I fell from graceful paradise, and only pain I have to tell from this abyss from which I cannot rise. With skin so pale, heart so rent, and soul so battered, I forever walk this twilight trail, utterly spent and scattered. With these hands I create and break, with this tongue I state and slake, with these lips I lull to sleep those who cry from their crypts. I stopped. Following this, I heard the sounds of what sounded like a sort of weak groaning, like he was in pain. This sent me into almost immediate panic mode. "Jason," I shouted. "Hang on, man. I'm coming." I rushed down to the basement door. When I tried to open it, it was locked, tight as a drum. I yanked and jerked furiously, but it was no use. "Jason, let me in." I heard another weak groaning coming from the other side. I then started battering the door with my shoulder. Still, this did no good either. This is when I decided, screw this. I went to one of the back windows leading into the kitchen and smashed it with a rock. I hated having to destroy my friend's property like that. Well, never mind the legal trouble, breaking and entering and all. But I had to do something, right? What's worse, just after I climbed through the window, I faintly smelled what smelled like something was burning. I called out, "Jason, you okay?" I was met with more sounds of painful groaning, now becoming louder. I rushed down to the basement door from the kitchen. At first, this door too was locked. Fortunately, though, one good shove with my shoulder and it opened right up for me. That said, though, part of me almost wishes that it hadn't. Inside the basement was dark, except for the very center of the room where Jason was. There, surrounded by candles arranged in a weird formation, was Jason, on his knees, bare-chested and clutching a knife in one hand and his little tape recorder in the other. What sent my blood to solid ice, though, were the numerous slashes I saw running across his chest and down his stomach. As well as this, I could see on the floor around him were what looked to be strange symbols, presumably scrawled in his blood. "Jason!" I shouted. His eyes snapped open wide and his neck jerked over to see me. For a moment we just stared at each other, me in horror, him with the most deranged look I'd ever seen on his, or anybody else for that matter's, face. It was the same face you'd see on an animal that spots a predator watching it. I took a step forward, careful not to startle him any further. I wasn't real sure as to his state of mind, so I wasn't going to take any chances with him still holding that knife. "Bro, put down the knife, okay? It's just me. Let's talk. Just put down the knife." He just kept staring at me. His eyes were fixed right on mine. It was like I wasn't even talking to a person here, but rather a puppet or statue. He was still like one too, completely stiff, poised almost. I took another step towards him. "Jason, put the knife down, man." I saw his eyes look down to the knife in his left hand. I took another step forward as he continued examining the knife in his hand. He looked back up at me as I took one more step forward, reaching toward him. Hey, give me the knife, okay? He exchanged one more glance between the knife and me before reaching out toward me to give me the knife. I slowly, cautiously approached to take it from him. I stayed poised myself, ready for him to try and attack me with it. Again, I wasn't exactly sure where his head was at, just that it wasn't where it should be. Luckily for me, he seemed to be working his way back to that because he relinquished the knife without any sort of struggle. I carefully took the knife and threw it across the room. He stayed still looking at me with a wild expression. "Jason," I said, taking his outstretched hand. "Come on, man. Let's get out of here." He wouldn't move. Suddenly I heard him whisper, "In the cold, dark abyss, I walk alone, an angel who once lived in bliss. Now for my sins I must atone." I looked at him confused. "Jason, talk to me. What's going on?" I was getting scared now. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. He sat still, just staring at me. I tried pulling for him to stand up, to lead him up and out of the basement, but he wouldn't budge. "Jason, come on, man, let's get out of here." He started slowly shaking his head. "No, man," he said softly. "I can't." "What? Why not?" I looked at him and he just stared back at me. "I can't go yet. The song's not finished. I have to finish the song. It has to be perfect." Every muscle in my body tensed up immediately hearing that. My mind screamed, "Perfect?" I kept pulling his hand. "Come on, man. You gotta get out of here." Well, he just sat, shaking his head, looking at the floor. "No. Can't go. Gotta finish the..." I cut him off. "Forget the song, man." He looked back up at me, startled. "Oh, look what's happened, man. Look what you're doing to yourself." He looked down at his chest. "This isn't healthy. I know you want to be successful with this and all, but this isn't okay. Come on, let's get out of here. We can go somewhere and find someone to..." "I said no, damn it," he snapped. And now I was the one who was spooked. He was staring back at me again. "I have to finish the song." "Why? Why is it so important to you that you're doing this thing to yourself?" "You wouldn't get it," he said, tightly closing his eyes. Well, I was about to lose it now. "What the fuck? What do you mean I wouldn't get it? What's there to get? You're locking yourself in your frickin' basement for a week straight, cutting yourself. Now you're just gonna sit here and tell me to screw off? Like hell." Once again, we just locked each other in another staring match. Both of us had looks of determination on our faces, looks of desperation almost. He was adamant to stay, and I was hellbound to get his ass out of that basement. "I'm not leaving until the song's finished," he declared. "Now, do yourself and me a favor and get the fuck out." I didn't move. I wanted to keep pressing to somehow force him to come out there with me, but I didn't. I couldn't. I couldn't make him move, and it was getting to be pretty clear to me by that point that nothing I could say or do was going to convince him otherwise. "Now," he barked. Startled again, I finally left the basement and went back into the kitchen. As I headed back out to my car, I took out my phone and dialed 911. I may not have been able to force him to come out of there myself, but I wasn't going to leave him to keep doing that to himself either. I told them I believed Jason's life was in danger and that I'd found him cutting himself. Only about 3 minutes later, the police and ambulance arrived. They tried at first to call for him to come out. When he wouldn't, I took them around to the back and showed him the window I'd broken into to get in, explaining that I did so after hearing him in pain. They went in and found him, bringing him out. As he came out, he looked at me with a look of both agitation and, in a way, fear. It was a look that said, "What the hell have you done?" Well, I thought I was saving his life. He was taken to the hospital after that. I decided to give him some space for the first week, figuring he felt pretty raw with me. And I thought with some time though, things would settle down. He'd come back, be put on some meds, see a counsellor, and we'd go back to the way things used to be with the band. We'd have fun with it, yeah? It was early in the morning that Wednesday, though, that I got a call from Vince. He and Ricky had decided to visit him that Tuesday after I told them what had happened. He told me Jason wouldn't talk to them, except to keep repeating those lyrics. Alone, I walk the twilight trail. Apparently late that night after they left, Jason was found by one of the nurses with his arms opened wide and blood soaking his bed. He was estimated to have been dead for at least an hour by that time. When I asked how the hell that could have happened, how he could have done that, given that he was on the 7th floor, he answered with the admitted expected answer of, well, fuck if I know. It showed up on the news that afternoon. My Facebook and Twitter feeds were also peppered with R.I.P. Jason Wayne posts, as well as a few questions from fans. Yeah, we actually have a fan base, just one that's very small and very slow at growing, asking what would happen with the Seraphim now that our lead singer was gone. Well, truthfully, I wasn't sure about that myself. The funeral was that Saturday, and I wanted to put together something in his memory. I decided to compile some of our greatest songs onto a CD to play at his funeral, along with some of the pictures of us from some of our happiest moments. It was while I was compiling the playlist that an idea occurred to me, one that I now wish that I'd shut down immediately. I decided to try checking out the song he was working on, the one he'd never finished. I thought, what better way to commemorate him, right, than to release the one song that he'd apparently prized the most, to show the world his, or at least what he believed to be, his greatest hit. I was able to get the tape recorder he'd used to record himself when I found him, and I started going through it. Now, this proved to be difficult, however, as most of what was on the tape was just bits and pieces, unfinished fragments, failed attempts, I guessed. Well, that was until I got to the end. And that was when the entire song played out. Like when I heard it before, just before I'd gone in for him that day. Well, Jason's voice sounded different, much deeper than usual. Under this full moon I lie awake. Long I wait for the tomb of which my hands will make. Under the sun I toil and ache. Desperately from destiny, I try to run only to finally break. Forgotten I will be. None will remember me. Once I leave, the world may be granted reprieve. When I reached the ether alone, I fell from graceful paradise, and only pain I have to tell from this abyss from which I cannot rise. With skin so pale, heart so rent, and soul so battered, I forever walk this twilight trail, utterly spent and scattered. With these hands I create and break, with this tongue I state and slake, with these lips I lull to sleep those whom cry from their crypts. In this twilight trail, the lost and never found, only along this moonlit veil may my voice sound. Well, I'll say this, at first I wasn't exactly sure what to make of it. I know I keep pointing this out, but the way the song sounded, the way in which his voice sounded so different from what it normally did, it just all sounded so surreal. Well, never mind the lyrics themselves, how depressing they were. I mean, sure, emotionally brutal songs had always kind of been our thing, but this was just a lot more so than usual. I guess to me at least, I could see how this was personally driven. He felt like his efforts, our efforts, weren't enough. He kept pushing for the music to be perfect, to be the best, but we kept being turned down. And this drove him to always keep practicing, always keep pushing harder and harder, trying to perfect his work. I guess, though, when he saw that Vince and the rest of us were crumbling under his pressure, he felt like he was alone. Like only he was willing to perfect the music the way he felt it should be. Alone I walk the twilight trail. I guess that's also why he insisted in shutting the rest of us out. He felt that this was a journey only he and he alone could embark on. The journey along the Twilight Trail. It's primarily this reason I felt like it was only right to include it in the memorial playlist, you know? I just wish, yes, I wish I'd known the true power this song apparently has. After editing the memorial video, I sent it over to Vince to give to the funeral home before posting it to the band's YouTube channel with the title, Godspeed Jason, R.I.P. And that was it for a while after that. The rest of the week was kind of surreal. I'd of course fallen into a bit of a depression for those next few days, just barely getting out of bed maybe once for the bathroom. I only ate once, that Thursday, and God knows I'd just as well have avoided that too. What made things worse during that time was the fact that that song kept looping in my head. No matter what I tried, I just couldn't make it stop. I kept hearing it. Hearing him. Forever I walk the twilight trail, utterly spent and scattered. At night time, I'd see him when I'd try to go to sleep. He'd be reaching out to me, singing the words to the song, his greatest hit. They'd repeat, and I'd see others, white, wispy, shadowy figures with sad expressions on their faces, surround and join him as he walked down a long path toward a light at the end of the dark expanse ahead. This would always cause me to feel both a sense of anxiety as well as just extreme sadness. It got so bad that when the funeral rolled around, I almost didn't go. Both before and during the service, the day felt like a drag. Everything felt like it was in slow-mo. Like the day wouldn't end, although we were all in limbo, forever trapped to live out Jason's funeral. Dramatic, I know, but I guess that's depression, isn't it? Feels like it'll never end, like you're alone. Walking down the twilight trail. Those words, in Jason's voice, kept repeating while the pastor talked. It was droning, hypnotic even, in a way. Eventually, I thought I could also hear the sound of whispers, ones from people that weren't Jason, or anyone else I knew for that matter, saying, "Do it. Walk with us." I tried to shut it out as much as I could, but it was no use. I finally ended up having to get up and leave before the memorial video was set to play. I went straight back to the dorm and buried myself in bed again. For hours I just sat there in my dark dorm room, depressed as fuck, yet almost completely devoid of any thought or feeling. All that was going through my head was that damn song over and over again. It wouldn't stop. I guess the other thing that's ironic was just how sleepy I was, despite also being anxious about sleeping, dreading what I'd see. And that would turn out to be for good reason too. That night I saw it all again, the trail, the shadows, Jason, but this time, this was when I was joined by a new, more frightening being. This thing, whatever the fuck it was or is, if anything, was gigantic, at least 10 feet high or more, with 4 large, gangly arms that reached out and began grabbing the shadows and Jason and forcing them into his body. As they were seized, all of them, Jason included, sang to me in unison, sounding just like how I'd heard Jason sound when he sang, "Walk with us down the twilight trail." They'd all get pulled into the giant shadow thing's body and conjoin with it. The thing's body then became nothing more than a giant dark mass of screams. I'd then see one of his gangly arms stretched towards me, ready to pull me in with the rest. In an earth-shaking bellow, they all scream out to me one last time as the thing is about to have me. It all ends with the twilight trail. And that's when I woke up. It was early morning, 9:30 a.m. I heard my phone go off, and when I looked, I saw that it was a text from Vince, one of at least 7 or 8 that he'd apparently sent me while I was out. The first couple were just simple. "Hey, you okay?" And, "What happened, man?" Just checking up on me. Then the next few, sent a few hours later, were texts about the song, asking me where I'd gotten it, and why Jason sounded so weird on it. The last couple, though, were him telling me that he was hearing them. I mean, the lyrics. just like I was. He said Ricky was apparently having the same thing happening with him. Oh, this made my heart start racing. With a horrifying feeling deep in the pit of my stomach, I began trying to call him. No answer. The same was the case for Ricky, too. Straight to voicemail. I texted both of them, begging them to hit me back, telling me that they're all right. Still, I didn't hear anything from either of them the rest of the day, or the next day, or the day after. I had to have blown their phones up to Kingdom Come at least 100 times each. Yet even as I type this now, I've yet to see or hear from either of them. Well, this scares me now more than ever because of what I found out. I saw a post one morning about one of the fans of our page committing suicide. She was found having downed an entire bottle of painkillers. Apparently just before she did it, she made this post. I hear him. I hear the seraphim. He wants me to go with him, to walk down the twilight trail. I'm coming. Now normally I'd have passed this off, morbid as this may sound, as just a star-struck fan who was just sad because Jason was dead. For one thing, she was only 13, but also because this was just one incident, nothing that would have been necessarily connected to the actual song itself. Well, not yet. Then, however, yesterday morning I found my newsfeed flooded with posts with similar messages. Not all of them were from the fan page either. Some of them were random people. All of them, though, were posting about the song. It was this morning that I saw news headlines about multiple people, at least 3 or 4, having taken their lives in various ways, all of them being one of the ones I mentioned, having made posts on Facebook. I'll go ahead and say, yes, I was visited and questioned by the cops about this. No, I wasn't arrested, but part of me feels like I ought to have been. Yes, I went and took the memorial video down, which I thought would have gotten rid of the problem before it could escalate. But no. Somehow, that song's still out there. I don't know who or why, but someone must have gotten a copy from the funeral home and released it on a CD. I found this out just a few hours ago, before I started writing this, when I found another post. This one saying, "Just bought the new Seraphim album. Heard there was a secret track, made by Jason Wayne himself. Oh, can't wait to listen. R.I.P. Jason." My heart stopped and I felt nauseous after reading that. I mean, we have no albums. We'd never gotten that far, having never even had an actual gig or record deal. We only had a handful of tracks. We had no kind of releases except for the memorial. I don't know what to do. I'm responsible for this. Even though I wasn't the one who wrote the song or the one mass-producing it now, I was the one who went and released it in the first place. If it weren't for me, that song would never have left that frickin' tape recorder. Those people would still be alive. Not only that, but I wouldn't be hearing them now, even as I write this. I'm so sorry. God, I'm scared. They want me to join them. They want all of us to walk with them. To walk with them forever. To the end, down the twilight trail. Well, happy Friday evening, ladies and gentlemen. A bit of a creepy one that for your Friday evening's entertainment. Another one from the wonderfully talented Corpse Child. Great story as ever. Really enjoyed that one. So, yeah, Friday coming around again. Now I've finally finished Operation Apple Tree. Yay! Hope you enjoyed that one. The epic story that it was. So on Sunday I'll be doing some other series. I'm not quite sure. There's a few things I need to finish up so I can finally move on to doing something else. I think it's going to be the meat locusts. Probably that. Hope so, because I want to read the end of that one as well. Okay, so anyway, waffling here. Have a lovely weekend. Till the next time, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like throwing me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.